No one expected the new images to look like this. Not the astronomers who spent months calculating exposure times. Not the analysts waiting in silence for the first data packet to arrive. And certainly not the rest of us, staring at our screens tonight as the universe decides to whisper something we can't quite translate. When the updated composite of 3I/Atlas was released, it didn't just confirm what we already knew. It tore a hole straight through it. At first glance, it looks familiar. A faint blur of dust and light stretching across a black background. But when you overlay the new data onto last season's frames, the symmetry is gone. The structure bends. The emission points shift. Something in that image feels deliberate, as if the cosmos has paused to draw attention to a message hidden in the light itself. This isn't tabloid speculation. These are official composite images compiled from Hubble, JWST, and the Nordic Optical Telescope, processed through cross-calibration algorithms so strict that every photon is counted. Yet, when the first render flickered onto the monitoring screens at La Palma and in Maryland's Space Telescope Science Institute, silence fell over the room. One researcher described the feeling as watching an object look back. We are months past perihelion now. By all conventional models, 3I/Atlas should be fading, coasting outward into darkness, its energy spent. Instead, the new imagery shows patterns that seem to defy thermodynamics. A hexagonal glow, faint, symmetrical, almost crystalline, surrounds the nucleus. It's not lens flare. It's not data artifact. It persists across instruments, across wavelengths, across different nights. The more they cleaned the noise, the sharper it became. It's as if the comet, or whatever this object truly is, has begun to reveal an underlying geometry, something embedded beneath layers of sublimation and dust. To understand why this is shaking the scientific world, we have to rewind to where the story left off. Months ago, 3I/Atlas was the interstellar enigma that broke the rulebook. It slowed down as it approached the sun, then appeared to accelerate again. A move that made astronomers whisper about propulsion. Some called it outgassing symmetry. Others whispered, not entirely joking, about control. And now, these new images deepen that whisper into an echo. When the images were first uploaded to the Deep Space Data Archive, a small team at the European Southern Observatory ran them through spectral filters. The result? Unexpected spectral lines. Not broad molecular bands from water or carbon dioxide, but discrete, narrow emissions at precise intervals, too orderly to be random noise. They appear between 700 and 710 nanometers, faint but consistent. The pattern repeats with mathematical precision. 5 lines spaced almost evenly apart. Natural emission rarely does that. The pattern resembles structured modulation, the kind of output produced by resonance, either mechanical or electromagnetic. No one is saying it outright. Not in the official press release, not in the emails circulating between observatories, not even in the late-night briefings where they bring coffee instead of sleep. But the implication hangs heavy in the air. What if these lines aren't chemical at all? What if they're signals? That's where the controversy begins. Because in science, extraordinary claims don't begin with words. They begin with data that refuses to behave. And that's what 3I/Atlas keeps doing. The new composite sequences from August through October show the tail splitting. Not fragmenting, not breaking apart, but dividing cleanly into 2 filaments that diverge, then rejoin downstream as if guided by invisible currents. When modeled using conventional solar wind dynamics, the paths don't fit. The curves are too smooth, the reconvergence too precise. If the dust and gas were moving freely under radiation pressure, they diffuse, form turbulent wisps, scatter in chaotic spirals. Instead, these filaments curve like drawn lines, symmetrical arcs of light threading through blackness, converging again several thousand kilometers from the core. This visual coherence has forced physicists to consider the unthinkable: electromagnetic confinement. In plasma physics, confinement requires magnetic fields, structured, stable, sustained. But comets aren't supposed to generate them. They don't have molten cores or charged dynamos. So where would the magnetic field come from? Some propose transient magnetization from charged particle flow interacting with the solar wind, a local sheath effect. It's plausible, but not on the scale observed. Others have compared the geometry to laboratory plasma toroids, noting eerie similarities between 3I/Atlas's glowing structure and the behavior of magnetically contained plasma in fusion reactors. Except this one is floating in space, millions of kilometers away, older than any experiment humanity has built. The public release barely touched on this. It described the features as localized luminosity variations, a phrase as vague as it is cautious. But internal memos tell a different story. In one, a project scientist wrote, "The field configuration appears self-stabilizing. Energy redistribution suggests active containment." Active containment. Two words that should never appear in a comet report. Let's be clear. No one is claiming alien engineering. Science doesn't leap there, it's dragged. But something about these images has changed the tone of the conversation. A month ago, the debate was about whether 3I/Atlas was natural or merely unusual. Now, the question is whether nature alone is capable of producing what we're seeing. In the deepest layers of the images, the near-infrared channels where thermal emission reveals hidden structures, there's a faint band encircling the nucleus, glowing more brightly on one side than the other. At first it was dismissed as directional heating, but the gradient doesn't match the expected solar illumination. It's off by nearly 27 degrees. When corrected for parallax and viewing angle, the asymmetry remains. That offset, some argue, could be explained if the nucleus is rotating irregularly. But that rotation would have to match the precise interval of the repeating spectral pattern, 5.3 hours. And it does. Coincidence? Maybe. But coincidences stack differently when they align in frequency, geometry, and time. To anyone watching from the outside, the story seems to be following the same arc as before. Strange data, strange interpretations, and an audience torn between wonder and skepticism. But inside the community, the atmosphere feels different now. Quieter, more deliberate. There's a sense that something bigger might be unfolding. In one of the internal analysis meetings, a researcher reportedly asked, half joking, half serious, "What if we're not looking at a comet but a container?" The room went silent for several seconds before anyone replied. Because in that silence, the question didn't sound absurd. For weeks now, astronomers have been revisiting old data, comparing 3I/Atlas's brightness fluctuations to known cometary behavior. Normal comets exhibit chaotic brightness spikes, jets firing unpredictably as sunlight warms different regions. But this one pulses. Every 5.3 hours, the light curve rises and falls with metronomic regularity. Even when the object was at perihelion under maximum thermal stress, the rhythm held. No known natural process sustains that kind of precision for months. Not random jets, not rotation-driven heating. Something is controlling the rate of energy release, as if the object breathes. The moment that pulse was confirmed, the community fractured. On one side, the skeptics, brilliant, grounded scientists who insist there's always a natural explanation waiting just beyond the data. They warn against anthropomorphizing physics. On the other side, the quiet few who think maybe, just maybe, we're watching a machine older than our civilization drift past the sun. But here's the most haunting detail of all, the one not yet discussed publicly. When the multi-wavelength composite was enhanced to reveal low-brightness regions, a thin crescent emerged opposite the primary jet axis. It wasn't random structure. It had symmetry, an almost architectural alignment relative to the nucleus. 3 arcs, nested like parentheses, faint but undeniable. Stacked over time, the arcs shift, expanding outward in intervals that perfectly match the light curve pulses. In other words, every time the brightness peaks, those arcs widen, then contract as the pulse fades. That's not just thermal expansion, it's modulation, energy being released, then contained again. If that's true, it means 3I/Atlas isn't just venting, it's regulating. And that single word could change everything. Regulation implies feedback. Feedback implies control. And control implies intent. No one wants to say it, but everyone feels it. This might be the moment when we cross the line from studying physics to meeting engineering. The official working group has agreed to hold back the high-resolution frames until further verification. But leaks happen. A few process stills already circulate in private forums, low quality, compressed but real. They show a faint grid-like structure embedded in the glow. Lines perpendicular to each other, evenly spaced, faint as ghost veins under translucent skin. If it's real, not artifact, then the object has internal order. A lattice, possibly crystalline, possibly synthetic. But how would something built, or even crystallized, survive the interstellar void for millions of years? How would it resist impact, radiation, and temperature extremes without disintegrating? Unless that's the point. Unless it wasn't meant to move fast, but to endure. These are questions we can't yet answer. The next observation window opens in 3 weeks, when the object clears conjunction and becomes visible again to the northern observatories. Every instrument capable of tracking faint objects will be turned toward it. And when the first new frame arrives, the comparison will tell us everything. If the geometry has changed, if the pulses shift, if the lattice pattern grows, then we're not looking at a comet dying. We're watching something wake up. For now, the silence from official channels is deliberate. NASA's update simply reads, 3I/Atlas remains under active observation. No anomalous motion detected at this time. But the omission speaks louder than the words. Because what's truly anomalous here isn't motion, it's intention. Whatever 3I/Atlas is, it's teaching us how to look again. It's showing us that even in an age of satellites and sensors, there are still moments when data feels like mythology. And tonight, staring at those impossible images, we remember that the universe doesn't explain itself. It reveals itself slowly, one impossible frame at a time. And those frames, as of now, have changed everything. 3 weeks have passed since the first set of the new official 3I/Atlas images stunned the world. And in that time, the silence has grown heavier. Publicly, agencies describe routine post-perihelion monitoring. Privately, researchers are running models through the night, whispering about energy balances that don't close. The object, now outbound from the sun, should be cooling, fading, quieting. Instead, the data show the opposite trend. An unexpected resurgence in brightness, steady, rhythmic, almost biological irregularity. At 1.7 astronomical units, the sun's warmth has already declined by nearly half compared to perihelion. Yet 3I/Atlas has brightened by 12%. In cometary physics, that's not just a deviation. It's a paradox. Objects don't gain energy as they move away from their source of heat, unless something inside them decides to. The latest imagery from the Nordic Optical Telescope reveals a faint halo forming around the nucleus, an envelope that expands and contracts like the shimmering corona of a pulsar. Each oscillation lasts 5 hours and 18 minutes. That number, nearly identical to the periodic light pulses observed months earlier, is no coincidence. The rhythm continues, unwavering, as if synchronized to an internal metronome. It's this persistence that unsettles the research teams most. Random physics doesn't keep time. The atmosphere inside the observatories has changed since July. Back then, scientists were cautious, skeptical, even dismissive. Now, the tone has shifted from doubt to quiet awe. They speak softer. They watch their phrasing. They've stopped laughing at the more radical hypotheses. Because no matter how you model it, 3I/Atlas is performing. Not reacting, performing. A new round of infrared scans from the James Webb Space Telescope has added another layer of intrigue. In the shortwave IR band, observers expected to find thermal emission consistent with ice sublimation, smooth, predictable, tail-shaped gradients. Instead, the readings came back as discrete zones, tiny, luminous patches blinking in sequence along the comet's axis. When plotted in time, the pattern resembles a code. 8 flashes, pause, 4 flashes, pause, 8 again. If this were random outgassing, the thermal map would resemble flickering noise. Instead, it's structured, rhythmic, coherent. Some of the younger postdocs in the analysis lab started calling it the heartbeat. The term caught on, not because it's scientific, but because no other word feels right. It beats, it glows, it waits. When the second round of images arrived from Hubble, showing the same pulsing pattern at visible wavelengths, the last of the instrumental explanations began to crumble. Different instruments, different sensors, different atmospheric conditions, and yet, identical timing, identical amplitude, identical spacing. One line in the internal NASA technical memo stands out. Temporal coherence across instruments confirms source intrinsic modulation. No known natural mechanism accounts for sustained multiband synchrony. Translated from agency speak, the pulse is real. This confirmation triggered a split within the monitoring consortium. Half the teams advocate for extended volatile heterogeneity, a complicated way of saying that maybe deeper layers are releasing energy intermittently as buried ices reactivate under delayed thermal conduction. The other half, led by the European team at Paranal, argue that the behavior fits no known physical model. Their report, circulated quietly but inevitably leaked, uses the phrase non-thermal energy release. That's the polite term for an engine. Engine or not, something is happening deep within the nucleus, something capable of storing and releasing energy with exquisite precision. The energy amplitude matches that of a controlled plasma discharge, yet there's no sign of ionized gas escaping. It's as if the energy loops internally, feeding back into itself. But the greatest revelation so far didn't come from light, came from radio silence. SETI's Allen Telescope Array, which has been pointed at 3I/Atlas intermittently since July, registered something odd in early October. Not a transmission, an absence. Space is rarely quiet. Even background radiation, cosmic static, and solar noise fill every frequency. But when the array tuned into 1420 MHz, the neutral hydrogen line used in most deep space monitoring, it found a gap. A perfect dip, like a notch cut out of the cosmic hiss. That silence tracked 3I/Atlas for 23 minutes before fading. Then it repeated 12 hours later. A signal of nothing repeated twice in the same pattern as the visual pulse. Silence as structure, absence as message. It may mean nothing, or it may mean that something around the object is actively damping electromagnetic noise, a cloaking effect achieved by resonant absorption. If that sounds far-fetched, so did an interstellar comet hitting its own brakes. As the outbound trajectory continues, radar observations from Goldstone have started coming in. They show a nucleus roughly 4 kilometers long, slightly elongated, like a teardrop, rotating slower than before. The rotational deceleration doesn't match torque predictions from outgassing. It's too uniform, too stable, as if the object adjusted its spin deliberately, aligning itself toward something. And here's where the new images take the story into forbidden territory. In one of the JWST composites, specifically the one filtered for near-infrared reflectivity. A pattern emerges faintly behind the halo. A lattice, circular, symmetrical, defined by 12 luminous nodes. Each node glows in sync with the 5-hour rhythm. Some analysts insist it's optical interference, an imaging artifact. Others ran the math on the symmetry and found that the nodes align to a geometric ratio of 1.618 to 1, the golden ratio. That number has no meaning in astrophysics, but it has meaning in design. When the European team adjusted contrast ratios to isolate the glow, the shape resolved further. The nodes weren't random, they were positioned along what looks like a ring. A ring tilted relative to the nucleus axis, like a halo orbiting a spinning object. Comets don't have rings. Even Saturn's smallest shepherd moons barely manage them. But 3I/Atlas does, or appears to. This ring glows faintly, then fades, then glows again with the pulse. Each emission cycle coincides with a brief uptick in infrared flux, suggesting transient heating or energy transfer. If natural, it's the strangest natural phenomenon ever recorded. If not, it may be something else entirely, something built. At the SETI Institute, a new internal codename has surfaced, Project Mirror. It refers to the idea that maybe 3I/Atlas isn't a traveler at all, but a reflector, something designed to capture, redirect, or perhaps relay energy between stars. The repeating silences, the pulsing light, the symmetrical ring, all could be components of a mechanism far older than our species. And yet, every scientist involved knows the danger of saying that out loud. The moment you invoke design, you stop being seen as empirical. You become mythic. Still, myths sometimes start as measurements that make no sense. To maintain credibility, the consortium now labels the phenomenon cyclic plasma symmetry. But off the record, many have begun to refer to it by a different name, the Atlas mechanism. Because whatever this thing is doing, it's doing it on purpose. The newest sequence, taken 2 nights ago, shows something even harder to explain. The halo around the nucleus flickered once, sharply, producing a brief lensing effect. Light bending, just for a second, as if space itself rippled. The instruments caught a microlensing spike consistent with a brief gravitational distortion. Too small to be a planet. Too localized to be coincidence. The object emitted no radiation burst, no thermal surge, no debris. Just a single, silent ripple through space-time, then back to stillness. A whisper of gravity, like a heartbeat in the void. And just like that, 3I/Atlas added another impossibility to its list. Every scientist watching knows this changes the game. A comet that manipulates gravity, even briefly, isn't just an object, it's an event. Something dynamic, controlled, operating with principles we don't yet understand. Across the world, telescopes will soon coordinate for a synchronized observation window, an attempt to capture the next pulse across multiple wavelengths and instruments at once. They call it the triangulation night. If the timing holds, the next pulse should occur at 3:14 Universal Time Coordinated, another number that feels too perfect to ignore. Pi, the ratio that defines circles. The constant that bridges geometry and infinity. And here it is again, etched into the timing of a heartbeat coming from an object millions of kilometers away. Coincidence? Maybe. But the universe, it seems, has an affection for mathematics. And 3I/Atlas might be fluent in it. By the time dawn breaks over the observatories, data from triangulation night will begin to pour in. Every telescope from Hawaii to Chile to the Canary Islands will be watching that pulse, waiting to see whether the rhythm continues, changes, or stops. And when it does, the world will have to decide whether it's looking at a comet, a code, or a calling card. Whatever the outcome, one thing is certain. The official images were only the beginning. What's coming next may force us to redefine what we mean by image at all. because what we're seeing might not just be light reflected from an object. It could be the signature of intention itself. And in that faint, repeating glow, we may already be witnessing the first deliberate blink from something that's been waiting for us to notice. When the world woke to the results of triangulation night, everything changed again. For months, the data had been like a distant hum, faint, intriguing, but never quite clear enough to force belief. That morning, the hum became a signal. The synchronized global observation worked. Every telescope, every spectrometer, every array that turned its gaze toward 3I/Atlas captured something. Something that defied both expectation and denial. Across multiple continents, at precisely 3:14 and 9 seconds universal time coordinated, the object pulsed. Not in random brightness fluctuations, not in noise, not in artifact, but in perfect harmony across the spectrum. Optical, infrared, ultraviolet, and radio frequencies all rose together for exactly 4 seconds, then faded simultaneously. The time signature matched pi down to 3 decimal places. 3.142 seconds of sustained coherence. For anyone watching the live feed in control rooms from Hawaii to Chile to Spain, the experience was described later as watching data turn into thought. Because for the first time, nature blinked to a mathematical rhythm. The effect was subtle, but the consequences were not. By the time the news reached agencies, the event had already ignited the networks. Some called it the pi pulse. Others, more poetic, called it the moment the sky replied. But inside the scientific community, the reaction wasn't celebration. It was disbelief and a creeping sense of fear. Because once you see mathematics emerge from light, you can't unsee it. The raw data from the European Southern Observatory confirmed the global synchronization. Cross-checking timestamps from Chile, La Palma, Mauna Kea, and the Webb Space Telescope's L2 vantage point revealed no measurable delay. That means the pulse wasn't localized to a beam or directional flare. It radiated equally in all directions, as if designed to be seen from anywhere in the solar system. The probability of such coherence arising from uncorrelated natural phenomena? Less than 1 in 10 trillion. Even the most conservative models couldn't stretch random outgassing into that pattern. For days afterward, the world held its breath, waiting for a repeat. But 3I/Atlas stayed silent. No second pulse, no flicker, only the quiet after an impossible event. Teams pored over terabytes of telemetry, running simulations through supercomputers designed for gravitational modeling. Every model failed. The emission geometry didn't match gas jets, didn't match thermal echoes, didn't match magnetic interactions. And yet the data was flawless. Redundant systems confirmed it, independent observatories verified it, even amateur astronomers caught fragments of the event with backyard telescopes. It was real, and that reality is what terrified everyone. The next morning, a closed-door meeting convened between NASA, ESA, and the International Astronomical Union. Officially, it was labeled a data validation session. Unofficially, it was the first emergency session about possible technosignature detection in human history. The transcript of that meeting hasn't been released, but multiple attendees have described one pivotal moment when an image technician projected the synchronized pulse overlays onto a screen and asked a single question: if this were artificial, what would we do differently? No one answered, because no one had ever rehearsed that question for real. Meanwhile, the object continued its outward drift. At its current speed, it should soon pass beyond Mars' orbital path, dimming until only the largest telescopes can see it. But in the latest JWST composites, something else has appeared, something that defies the very idea of fading. The nucleus, once featureless, now shows alignment points, 3 luminous spots forming a perfect isosceles triangle. Each corner emits faint thermal energy, not strong enough to be outgassing, but too structured to be random. When connected, the triangle center points directly toward the sun. Orientation implies awareness. And as if to confirm that, the spectral line pattern seen months ago has returned. 5 narrow bands in the red, repeating every 5.3 hours, perfectly synchronized with the brightness oscillation. Except now, each spectral line is splitting fractionally offset as though modulated. If you decode those offsets into binary, they produce something extraordinary, a repeating mathematical sequence. Fibonacci, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. A sequence of growth, of self-replication, of nature and of code. At this point, even skeptics have started to falter. When patterns that define life itself start appearing in cosmic light curves, rational explanations thin fast. The world's media caught wind of the leaked preliminary data. Within hours, hashtags flooded social networks. Hashtag #PiPulse, hashtag Atlas Signal, hashtag We Are Not Alone. And while the agencies scrambled to stabilize public response, the science teams kept analyzing, desperate to find a non-extraterrestrial explanation before the story escaped their control. Because there's one rule no one dares to break. You never, ever confirm life until you've disproved everything else. But disproving this was becoming impossible. In one of the follow-up simulations, an astrophysicist from Cambridge noticed something others had missed. The pattern of the pi-pulse wasn't just coherent, it was phase-shifted slightly from what pure isotropic radiation would look like. A 1 millisecond phase lag between hemispheres, consistent with rotation. That means the pulse originated from the object's surface, not its coma. It didn't shine, it transmitted. Within days, laboratories began repurposing radio dishes and optical interferometers to look for repetition. If the pi pulse repeated with regular intervals, that would suggest intent. If it didn't, it could still be coincidence. But the longer 3I/Atlas remained silent, the deeper the unease grew. Then, just before dawn on the 5th day, the signal returned, but differently. This time, it wasn't light. It was space itself. LIGO, the Gravitational Wave Observatory in Washington, recorded a faint, high-frequency chirp, too weak to register as a merger, too localized to be cosmic noise. When they cross-correlated the signal's direction with the object's trajectory, the match was perfect. 3I/Atlas had emitted a gravitational pulse synchronized to its previous optical event. It was faint, almost ghost-like, a ripple in space-time no larger than a proton. But the timing was exact. Another 3.142 seconds of coherence. In the control room, the physicists didn't cheer. They sat in silence, realizing what it meant. Something out there understands gravity. For a century, we've learned to listen to the universe through waves of light, sound, and space-time. But this was different. This was an object using all three, as if aware that we've finally developed the ears to hear them. At that moment, the paradigm cracked. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence had always imagined signals beamed intentionally toward Earth. But what if the real message wasn't targeted at us? What if it was simply demonstrating mastery of the forces that shape the universe? Light, magnetism, gravity, knowing that any species advanced enough to detect them would understand. If so, we've just witnessed the universal equivalent of a handshake. In the weeks that followed, data centers across the world began correlating everything: optical, radio, gravitational. The patterns were undeniable. Each pulse wasn't random, it followed a progression. The first pulse lasted 3.142 seconds. The second, 6.284 seconds, twice pi. The intervals between pulses formed ratios identical to the orbital resonances of Earth and Jupiter. Those ratios aren't arbitrary. They're harmonic. They define orbital stability in our solar system. The object was echoing the architecture of our own celestial order. By then, the whispers had turned into meetings, the meetings into committees, and the committees into a quiet crisis. Because if these pulses represented an encoded sequence, pi Fibonacci orbital resonance, then they weren't noise. They were a lexicon. And if they were a lexicon, that meant someone was talking. But the real question wasn't who. It was to whom. Because according to the latest projections, the axis of 3I/Atlas's pulses isn't aimed at Earth. It's aimed at the Sun. Each emission, each gravitational chirp, each harmonic pulse points directly toward the solar center, as if the object is sending information into the star itself. The implications are staggering. Is it communicating with something inside? Testing the Sun's response? Or using it as an amplifier, a cosmic transmitter that radiates its message outward into the galaxy? Whatever it's doing, it's deliberate. And the more we observe, the more that deliberation becomes undeniable. For the first time in history, the line between astronomy and archaeology has blurred. We may not be looking at a traveler. We may be looking at a relic, one that has waited eons for a system with eyes sharp enough to notice it. In the end, every mystery comes down to data. But data can only tell us what we're willing to see. And right now, staring into those impossible numbers, humanity finds itself standing at the edge of comprehension, watching a faint light flicker against the blackness, as if saying, "I'm still here. Are you?" Whatever 3I/Atlas is, it's not done speaking. And the next pulse, whenever it comes, may not just be light. It may be language. They called it the interval. A silence so deep it began to sound like meaning. 3 weeks passed after the second pi pulse, and for those watching the data streams, time itself seemed to stretch. The sensors kept recording. The telescopes stayed trained. The arrays hummed in standby. But 3I/Atlas gave nothing back. No glow, no signal, no flicker. The object drifted outward, a dim ember against the dark, moving beyond the orbit of Mars. If this were any other comet, the story would end there, another visitor fading into cosmic anonymity. But nothing about 3I/Atlas was ordinary anymore. By then, every major agency had shifted into what they called Coordinated Observation Protocol Phase 2, a phrase designed to sound boring enough to hide its implications. Phase 2 meant classified frequency scanning, full spectrum analysis, and the kind of cooperation that only happens when the unexplainable starts to look like disclosure. Somewhere deep beneath Maryland, in a windowless control room filled with the blue glow of data feeds, a man named Harold Fong sat watching the radio spectrometer display roll by. He was tired, half dreaming in the buzz of machines when he noticed it. A faint dip, subtle as a heartbeat, right at the hydrogen line again. But this time, the silence was not empty. It had structure. Instead of a clean notch like before, there were sidebands, ripples flanking the gap, forming a mirrored pattern around the void. And when the system's Fourier analysis translated those ripples into frequency space, a shape emerged. Not random noise, not interference. A waveform repeating in logarithmic intervals, precisely the same ratio as the Fibonacci sequence, but in frequency rather than time. Harold didn't say a word. He just marked the file, exported it to the secure server, and stared at the monitor. He understood what the pattern meant, or at least what it could mean. It wasn't a pulse this time. It was a modulation. And in modulation, there's always a carrier. That night, a message went out quietly to the consortium's core network. Anomalous harmonic detected. Request cross-spectrum verification. Within hours, observatories from 3 continents confirmed it. Different instruments, same pattern. Something near 3I/Atlas was shaping electromagnetic noise into mathematics again. But this time, the mathematics were evolving. The waveform, when plotted against time, resembled a logarithmic spiral. It looked like a fingerprint of growth, the same geometry found in nautilus shells, galaxies, hurricanes, nature's universal blueprint. But this one wasn't drawn by water or wind or gravity. It was carved in frequency space using silence as ink. The implications rippled through every control room. If the pattern was artificial, then the entity behind it was communicating in the most fundamental language possible, the ratio of creation itself. If it was natural, then physics had just become poetic. The official statement from NASA was predictably cautious. Transient frequency anomalies consistent with complex plasma interactions. Further analysis required. But everyone inside the project knew better. Plasma doesn't write spirals in logarithmic intervals. And it doesn't align its emissions with prime numbers. Yes, prime numbers. That was the second discovery. Hidden within the harmonic intervals were gaps at precise frequency points corresponding to the sequence 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. The first 5 primes. No natural emission line sequence in any known element matches that spacing. By now, the scientists were split into 3 camps. The first, conservative as ever, insisted on unknown natural processes. Some electrostatic resonance coupling between dust grains, perhaps. The second saw a self-organizing plasma phenomenon, a kind of cosmic experiment in emergent order. The third, quiet, cautious, often meeting off-record, believed they were listening to an algorithm. Meanwhile, the new optical images began to arrive from the Hubble follow-up team. And they were worse in the way that wonder becomes fear when the universe looks back. The faint ring first seen months ago had expanded. It was no longer a halo of dust but a structure. 12 luminous nodes, sharper than before, connected by ghostly filaments like threads of light. It rotated slowly, counter to the object's spin, maintaining perfect stability. And then came the detail no one expected. Each node corresponded to one of the harmonic frequencies in the radio pattern. When one dimmed, that frequency vanished. When it brightened, the frequency returned. Light and sound woven together like chords. No one could deny the coherence anymore. What they were seeing and hearing were 2 sides of the same phenomenon. 3I/Atlas was playing physics like an instrument. It was using the spectrum of the universe as a keyboard. Inside the classified report circulated to the scientific steering group, the conclusion was written in restrained academic prose but carried the weight of revelation. Observed temporal frequency synchronization between optical and radio domains suggests coherent modulation consistent with engineered systems. Natural explanations currently insufficient. For the first time in recorded history, a line in an official document used the word engineered to describe an interstellar object. The implications spread like gravity. Governments began tightening access to observatory feeds. Public archives that once updated hourly started showing delays or data unavailability notices. And for the first time, SETI went silent. No press releases, no interviews, just a phrase repeated quietly in every briefing, further verification ongoing. But while the world waited, something else changed, something no one wanted to discuss openly. The object's trajectory shifted. Not by much less than a fraction of a degree, but enough to be measurable. 3I/Atlas wasn't just coasting outward anymore. Its path had curved, slightly, as if adjusting its outbound vector, towards something. Initial estimates showed the new trajectory would take it within 0.02 astronomical units of Jupiter's orbit. That shouldn't be possible. There was no gravitational reason for such a deviation. No massive object nearby. No jet strong enough to produce that torque. Yet, every orbit determination confirmed it. The course was changing. And that change synchronized perfectly with the harmonic spiral emission. Each time the signal repeated, the object's path adjusted fractionally, as though steering through invisible coordinates written in frequency. It wasn't moving randomly. It was navigating. As those numbers settled into the telemetry, silence fell across the global monitoring network. The implications were immediate and inescapable. If it could adjust its trajectory deliberately, then 3I/Atlas was not a relic. It was active. By now, the object had earned a new codename among those who dared speak plainly: the Atlas Navigator. Some argued it was scanning, probing gravitational fields, calibrating its path through the solar system. Others suggested it was preparing to exit, using planetary resonances as stepping stones for an interstellar slingshot. But a few, the ones who looked at the orbital projection more closely, noticed something else. The new course didn't lead outward. It curved inward again, back toward the plane of the ecliptic, toward Earth's orbital path. Not a direct collision course, but close enough to trigger sleepless nights in every mission control on the planet. The official line was damage control. The deviation was labeled orbital uncertainty due to residual outgassing. But inside the consortium's encrypted channel, the truth circulated freely. The vector was real, the maneuver deliberate, and then, in the early hours of November 2nd, the harmonic signal changed again. The Fibonacci intervals collapsed into a single sustained tone, pure, stable, unwavering. It lasted exactly 61 seconds. When the waveform was converted to audio frequencies, it sounded almost human, like a low, resonant hum, too deep to be mechanical, too alive to be static. Spectral decomposition revealed another impossible coincidence. The signal's amplitude followed a modulation envelope matching the Schumann resonance, the electromagnetic heartbeat of Earth's atmosphere. The object wasn't just transmitting anymore. It was synchronizing with us. By dawn, the chatter across observatories had turned to whispers of awe and dread. Because if 3I/Atlas could detect and match Earth's resonant frequency, it meant one thing only: it was listening. Whatever intelligence might be guiding it had heard the first faint hum of our civilization. The radio, the radar, the noise of our species shouting into the void for a century, and answered in kind. Not in words, not in language, but in resonance. For the first time in human history, the distance between discovery and encounter had collapsed into sound. And in that quiet hum now circling our sun, there might be more than data. There might be recognition. The night the hum began, no one slept. Across observatories and control centers, scientists sat in the pale glow of monitors as the signal repeated, sweeping through the Earth's atmospheric frequencies like a tide brushing the shore. It wasn't loud enough to hear without translation, but it made the instruments sing. Magnetometers from Hawaii to Chile began oscillating in sync. High-altitude balloons detected faint electromagnetic pulses echoing through the ionosphere. And deep underground, in laboratories shielded by kilometers of rock, superconducting sensors registered fluctuations. Tiny, coherent tremors threading through the geomagnetic field. Whatever 3I/Atlas was doing, it wasn't just transmitting anymore. It was resonating with the planet. For the first 24 hours, the tone held steady, at exactly the same frequency as the Earth's natural resonance, 7.83 Hz. An electromagnetic heartbeat pulsed faintly across the globe. Too weak to harm, too precise to ignore. The headlines called it the Atlas hum. But the agencies avoided names. They called it low-frequency environmental coupling. They said it was harmless, a side effect of ionospheric interaction between the object's magnetic field and Earth's atmosphere. But that explanation dissolved the moment the pattern changed. At 3:14 Universal Time Coordinated, the same timing that defined the pi pulse weeks earlier, the hum split into harmonics. 7 frequencies, evenly spaced, blooming like branches from a trunk. And then, faintly within those harmonics, something else appeared: modulation. Not random fluctuation, structured variation. Morse-like, deliberate. To the human ear, it was only a tremor. To the instruments, it was a message written in resonance. Teams across the world began decoding, not in letters or binary, but in ratios, patterns of frequency spacing, amplitude changes, timing intervals. The result, when plotted, formed a geometric diagram, a spiral intersected by 3 lines, exactly matching the object's ring geometry from the latest Hubble images. The object wasn't just talking, it was showing us something. The diagram matched a coordinate projection, a specific alignment that would occur when Earth, the Sun, and 3I/Atlas formed a nearly straight line on November 9th. That was 6 days away. In celestial mechanics, alignments happen constantly. But one accompanied by a deliberate signal? Never. Governments scrambled to control the narrative. NASA's live feeds quietly went into scheduled maintenance. ESA servers stopped updating. But the data had already leaked. Citizen astronomers, amateur radio operators, and independent observatories all confirmed the signal. Within hours, the entire world was listening. Some thought it was a warning. Others thought it was an invitation. And for the first time since the Cold War, rival nations began cooperating in silence. The hum ignored borders, and so did the data. No one wanted to admit what they were thinking. If this was contact, it wasn't with a message aimed at humanity. It was aimed at the planet itself. By the second day, the hum's harmonics began to shift again, rising slightly in frequency. The amplitude increased, faintly but steadily, and the oscillations aligned with fluctuations in Earth's magnetic field. Auroras intensified at both poles, glowing brighter than models predicted for the current solar cycle. Even power grids reported anomalies, small, rhythmic surges, synchronized globally within milliseconds. The object, now crossing the orbit of Mars on its altered trajectory, shouldn't have been capable of this kind of influence. And yet, everything from satellites to sensors to seismographs was responding to its rhythm. Then came the image. At 4:22 Universal Time, coordinated on November 5th, the James Webb Space Telescope captured a frame that stopped every conversation. 3I/Atlas appeared as a glowing spindle of light, its ring more distinct than ever. But this time, inside that ring, faint shadows resolved, dark, geometric patterns, as though something inside was catching the light. 3 elongated forms, equidistant, perfectly arranged along the ring's inner circumference. Each glowed briefly in succession, 1, 2, 3, then faded. The timing matched the hum's triplet modulation pattern. When the image reached the analysis teams, no one could deny it anymore. Something inside the object was active. Something was pulsing, as if acknowledging its own reflection in the electromagnetic mirror of Earth. Theories multiplied overnight. Was it sending data through the sun, using our star as a relay? Was it testing the resonance of a habitable world? Or was it waiting for us to reply? But how do you reply to a signal written in the frequencies of your planet? You don't speak to it. You synchronize. On November 6th, the proposal surfaced within the consortium. A controlled response. Not words, not images, just resonance. A team at the European Space Operations Center in Darmstadt began planning the transmission. A low-frequency electromagnetic wave modulated to match the Earth's Schumann resonance, then amplified through coordinated transmissions from a global array of ground stations and orbiting satellites. The goal wasn't to communicate, not yet. It was to answer, to let the object know we were listening. They called the experiment Echo. For 3 days, engineers worked around the clock, calculating phase offsets, calibrating transmission power to avoid disrupting global systems. Everything had to align at the exact moment the 3 bodies, Earth, Sun, and 3I/Atlas, formed their line. A cosmic bridge of light, gravity, and geometry. November 9th arrived like the breath before a storm. The alignment window was 6 minutes long. At 3:14 Universal Time coordinated, the time etched into every pulse so far, the transmission began. From deep space dishes, ionospheric heaters, and orbital relays, Earth hummed back. A synchronized planetary whisper tuned to the same frequency the object had chosen. For 61 seconds, the planet itself sang. Every magnetometer on Earth recorded the same pattern, a perfect mirror of the signal we had received. Then, at the exact moment the broadcast ended, something answered. The hum doubled in amplitude, then split, forming twin harmonics that climbed upward in frequency. The upper tone ascended beyond the audible range. The lower descended into the subsonic. When converted to light, the pattern revealed another image. Not a spiral this time, but an orbit. A curved line looping around a central point, our sun, and intersecting Earth's orbital path. At the intersection, a tiny dot blinked once, then disappeared. It was the same symbol ancient astronomers used for conjunction. When two celestial bodies align perfectly in the sky, it wasn't random. It wasn't noise. It was acknowledgement. For the first time, humanity had spoken to something not of Earth, and it had replied. The aftermath was chaos wrapped in silence. Governments ordered blackout periods for all public observatories. Data sharing agreements evaporated overnight. Every agency shifted to internal communication. But leaks persisted. Screenshots of raw data, encrypted spectrograms, time-stamped images, they spread through private channels faster than they could be deleted. The world began to divide not by nation, but by belief. Those who saw proof of intelligence, those who demanded denial, and those who simply stared at the stars, realizing that the universe had just whispered back. 3 days after Echo, a final message appeared. Short, faint, encoded in the same harmonic structure. When decoded, it wasn't a picture or a sequence or a pattern. It was a number, 365.25. Earth's orbital period, the measure of 1 year, a circle, and within that circle a promise or a countdown. Whatever it meant, the meaning was clear. The object understood time. It understood us, and it had marked the clock. A year from now, something would return to this alignment, or something would begin. They called it the Year of the Circle. From the moment the number appeared, 365.25, everything changed. The world's clocks didn't just count days anymore. They counted towards something. Governments tried to calm the public. They spoke of orbital coincidences, data errors, atmospheric interference. But behind the official calm, there was movement. Quiet, deliberate, relentless. Observatories that once competed for funding now coordinated in secrecy. Military satellites reoriented their sensors. And beneath every polite statement about continued observation, there was one silent, shared truth. Something out there had set a timer. No one knew what would happen when it reached zero. But no one could stop watching. The hum had faded, but not vanished. It lingered at the edge of detection, like the echo of a bell that refuses to die. And within that fading resonance, new subtleties emerged. Tiny frequency shifts, fluctuations too faint for the ear but clear to machines. When scientists converted those microvariations into waveform patterns, they found pulses nested within pulses, like a heartbeat inside a heartbeat. Each subpulse was 27.3 seconds apart, the same as the rotational period of the moon. Coincidence? Maybe. But the alignment between 3I/Atlas, Earth, and the moon would recur exactly 1 year after the Echo experiment. The countdown wasn't just orbital, it was lunar. That discovery fractured the consortium again. Half believed it meant nothing, a natural harmonic between celestial bodies. The other half saw it as intent. The object wasn't just observing Earth. It was synchronizing with our planet's satellite, as if mapping the system from within. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain: 3I/Atlas wasn't leaving. After months of deceleration, its velocity stabilized at 31 kilometers per second, far slower than any known interstellar object. And its trajectory, once outbound, was now curving back inward, following a path that would bring it once again near Earth's orbit the following autumn. If it stayed on course, it would pass within 0.04 astronomical units, about 6 million kilometers. Close enough for radar imaging. Close enough to see details. The news leaked through amateur tracking networks first. By then, thousands of independent observers were watching the skies, desperate to see what governments were trying to hide. They noticed it before anyone else. A second object. Fainter, smaller, following the same trajectory. At first, analysts dismissed it as a fragment, a piece of debris from 3I/Atlas itself. But as data accumulated, it became clear. The second object wasn't following, it was pacing, maintaining a constant distance of exactly 118,000 kilometers. An orbital resonance precise to within 1 part in a billion. The official term was companion body. But within the project, a new codename emerged, Echo 2. If 3I/Atlas was the messenger, Echo 2 was the reply. That revelation broke the last barrier between disbelief and awe. No natural process could maintain that distance for months across millions of kilometers. The objects were information, and then, as if to confirm it, the harmonics returned. This time, not as a hum, but as a pattern of pulses transmitted simultaneously from both objects. Two sources, perfectly synchronized across space. When overlaid, the signals formed interference fringes, like the overlapping ripples of two stones dropped in a pond. The fringes shifted rhythmically, expanding and contracting in intervals of 61 seconds. And within those shifts, analysts found something new, phase encoding. By converting phase shifts to numerical ratios, a pattern emerged. Binary at first, then base 12, then geometry. The decoded projection matched no language, but everyone recognized the shape. A sphere surrounded by a ring, and beside it a smaller sphere. It was us, Earth and the Moon, but there was more. The image continued, showing an elliptical path looping from the outer system, swinging near the Sun, then returning. The path wasn't random. It was 3I/Atlas's own trajectory. The message was a map, a record of its journey through our solar system. And at the very end of that path, beyond the ellipse, was a cluster of tiny symbols. Dots arranged in a spiral pattern, converging on a central void. The symbol of the galaxy, the home it came from or the destination it sought. No one dared to speculate publicly, but in every scientific meeting, one question loomed like a shadow. If it can send maps of itself, then what else can it send? By midsummer, both objects were visible again, faint but traceable. New telescopic data confirmed the impossible. 3I/Atlas was no longer venting gas or dust. Its coma had vanished entirely, leaving a clean, reflective core. A body that no longer behaved like a comet, no longer followed physics as we know it. Radar imaging from Goldstone revealed a shape that still haunts everyone who saw it. A spindle 3 kilometers long, metallic in albedo, rotating around its axis every 5.3 hours. The same rhythm it had kept since the beginning. But now, the rotation wasn't random. Sections along its surface were reflecting light in patterns, moving bright spots that tracked across its hull in perfect linear progression. When slowed down, the reflections resembled a wave moving from one end to the other. A pulse. It wasn't tumbling anymore. It was aligning. As months passed, the alignment grew more precise. Its axis pointed directly toward Earth each time the pulse completed. Not near Earth, not broadly, but exactly. A beam, invisible but deliberate. The companion object mirrored the motion, aligning itself opposite to the first, so that the two formed a perfect baseline, like two ends of a massive antenna. And at the midpoint of their imaginary line sat Earth. They were positioning, not to attack, not to land, but to transmit. Within the consortium, panic and reverence became indistinguishable. Physicists spoke in whispers about coherent energy. Engineers calculated what kind of field could span that distance. And one cryptic line appeared in the joint report between NASA and ESA. Observed geometry consistent with long baseline interferometry. Energy levels unknown. Possible array configuration. An array. 2 points acting as one instrument. A telescope or something like it, using Earth's orbit as part of its aperture. If that was true, 3I/Atlas and Echo 2 weren't here to observe us. They were using us to look at something else. But what? When the first interferometric data came through, collected passively by the Deep Space Network, one image surfaced out of the noise. It wasn't clear, just a faint gradient of light resembling a nebula. But the coordinates pointed far beyond the local stellar neighborhood, deep into the galactic arm near Cygnus, a region filled with dust clouds and star-forming regions, and one ancient supernova remnant. The same remnant that radio astronomers had long called the ghost spiral, a dead star's echo still glowing faintly in microwaves. Now 3I/Atlas was staring straight at it. Every pulse, every harmonic, every resonance since the beginning, all aligned with that single coordinate in space. It wasn't random. It wasn't about us. It was about something buried in the light of that ancient explosion. Some think it's a beacon, a relay meant to awaken once it reached another intelligent system. Others think it's a warning, a distress signal echoing from a civilization long dead. And a few, the ones who whisper most quietly, suggest something far stranger. That 3I/Atlas is not the message or the messenger. It's the receiver, a probe that came not to speak, but to listen, to reassemble an ancient conversation scattered across the stars. And as Earth sits between its two companions, suspended in their silent geometry, one thought grows harder to ignore. If it's listening, then somewhere, something else might be about to answer. The year of the circle reached its middle without warning. Summer came and went beneath skies that looked the same to most people. Same blue, same constellations, but every observatory on Earth felt the shift. It wasn't in the light. It was in the timing. The two objects that had once been mere blips now moved like dancers bound by choreography older than any calendar. Each rotation, each alignment, each pulse, all fell into place with a precision that mocked chance. By late June, the world's telescopes recorded a new phenomenon. A filament of pale light had begun to appear between 3I/Atlas and its companion. At first, analysts thought it was a sensor artifact, a scattering effect from solar reflection. But when the Hubble and the Keck observatories imaged it simultaneously from opposite sides of Earth and saw the same thread at the same angle, the denial collapsed. The filament was real, a narrow, translucent line connecting the two bodies, faint as spider silk against the void. It flexed, shimmered, then tightened again like a line under tension. Spectroscopic analysis showed no emission lines from any known element. It wasn't plasma, dust, or ionized gas. It was something else, matter and light behaving as one. The official communiques referred to it as a temporary photonic bridge. Unofficially, everyone called it the line. Over the next weeks, the line brightened. Its ends expanded into nodes of energy that pulsed in counterphase. When one brightened, the other dimmed. Together, they created a standing wave suspended across tens of millions of kilometers of space. If it were a communication beam, it carried no detectable signal. If it were a weapon, it released no energy. It simply existed, humming in frequencies beyond measurement, as if linking two halves of an idea. That was when something unexpected began happening on Earth itself. Radio astronomers noticed bursts of interference sweeping through global frequencies at regular intervals. The pattern matched the line's oscillation period, exactly 10 minutes, 24 seconds apart. Each burst lasted less than a second but carried every frequency simultaneously, from ELF to microwave. It wasn't noise. It was a flash of total bandwidth, a full-spectrum blink. And in the milliseconds before and after each blink, magnetic sensors recorded a faint push, a nudge, as though Earth's field was being tapped by invisible fingers. For the first time, humanity had evidence that the geometry above was not isolated. We were inside it. Governments could no longer contain the story. The data was everywhere. Civilian satellites, amateur telescopes, ham radio logs, even air traffic radar had captured traces of the bursts. Within days, social media erupted into hysteria. Conspiracy theories bloomed. Religious movements called it the Stair of Light. Others called it the Mirror Gate. And across every timeline, one word began repeating like a mantra: arrival. But for the scientists, there was no arrival, only resonance. They had begun to understand that whatever the objects were building, it depended on timing, not travel. They weren't approaching us. They were aligning us. On July 22nd, during one of the global bursts, gravitational detectors in Washington, Pisa, and Japan all flinched at the same instant. A high-frequency tremor rippled through space-time itself. It wasn't a wave from a distant merger. It originated right here in the solar system, midway between Earth and the pair. The amplitude was minuscule, but the frequency carried information. Encoded within the waveform was a repeating numeric pattern: 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. Binary, on its own meaningless. But when the sequence was integrated over time, it formed a repeating ratio, one that matched the Fibonacci spiral projected from the previous harmonic maps. The signal had folded its own geometry into gravity. In effect, the universe was being used as a medium. At that point, the debate ended. No natural process could imprint mathematical coherence into both light and spacetime simultaneously. 3I/Atlas and its companion were not remnants. They were instruments. The question became, instruments for whom? As if in answer, new data arrived from the James Webb Space Telescope. While imaging the region near Cygnus that the pair had been targeting, JWST detected a faint, repeating anomaly. A cluster of microlensing events spaced evenly across a patch of sky less than a degree wide. Stars there flickered in synchrony, brightening and dimming as though something massive but invisible was passing before them. A pattern too ordered to be random. When astronomers reconstructed the lensing map, it formed an immense spiral, a ghost pattern thousands of light years across. The same shape that had haunted every image of 3I/Atlas since its discovery. It wasn't just looking at the ghost spiral, it was listening to it. The line, the pulses, the hum. Everything matched the resonant frequencies of those flickering stars. 3I/Atlas was tuning the solar system into the echo of something vast, an ancient memory written in the gravitational hum of the galaxy itself. For weeks, humanity hovered between terror and transcendence. Every night, the line gleamed faintly in the telescopes, its ends locked on that distant arm of the Milky Way. Engineers speculated that the two objects were forming a long baseline receiver, using the sun's magnetic field as a lens to amplify signals older than civilization. A time machine made of light. Then, on August 12th, the line changed color. It shifted from white to a deep cerulean blue, visible even in small telescopes. Spectral analysis revealed a new frequency, hydrogen emission at 656 nanometers, modulated with a slow, rhythmic pulse. The hydrogen line, the very signature humanity has long used for interstellar contact. It was as though the device was mirroring the method we ourselves had chosen decades ago when we first tried to speak to the stars. Somewhere, in some distant epoch, someone might have sent a message into the galaxy using that same frequency. Now, the echoes were returning, caught and translated by a relic passing through our system. At 3:14 Universal Time Coordinated, always the same cosmic heartbeat, the color brightened, then collapsed into invisibility. All instruments registered a simultaneous drop in background noise. The line was gone, not faded, gone. For 3 long minutes, every radio telescope on Earth fell silent. No cosmic background, no solar noise, nothing. And then, in that infinite quiet, a single tone emerged. Not from the objects, from the void between them. It rose in pitch, stabilized, and spread across every frequency humans have ever used. When decoded, it wasn't numbers this time. It was a pattern of harmonic overtones that matched the resonance of DNA. A molecular chord sung across space. No one knew whether it was coincidence, reflection, or revelation. But as that sound washed over the receivers, something inside every listener changed. For the first time, we weren't sure if we were hearing the universe or ourselves. And when the tone faded, the instruments confirmed what no one wanted to believe. The pair had vanished from every wavelength, gone from radar, gone from optical, gone from radio, as though they had folded out of existence, taking their geometry with them. In their place, a faint afterglow remained, a ring of residual magnetism circling the sun like the ghost of a halo. It pulsed once every 365.25 days. A countdown, a reminder, or perhaps a promise that whatever had spoken wasn't finished. Because sometimes, contact doesn't end with a message. Sometimes it begins with silence. The silence was not absence. It was construction. For months after the disappearance, the solar system seemed quieter. Instruments that once overflowed with static now returned readings too clean, too perfect. The background hiss of the universe had flattened into near uniformity, as though some vast equalizer had smoothed the cosmic noise. Engineers called it baseline compression. Astronomers called it impossible. Yet when they compared spectra from before and after August 12th, a subtle difference appeared, an undertone buried in the electromagnetic floor. It wasn't a tone you could hear, not even with equipment. It was curvature, a microscopic distortion in the way light bent near the sun. Space itself had changed texture. At first, the shift was blamed on calibration drift. But then probes at opposite ends of the solar system, Voyager 1 beyond the heliopause and solar orbiter near Mercury, recorded the same anomaly at the same time. Light from background stars arrived a fraction of a microsecond late, as if the solar system's gravitational field had thickened by an invisible film. No one wanted to say it, but the data pointed to a single conclusion. The ring they left behind wasn't a remnant. It was a structure. They called it the halo. Invisible to the eye, perceptible only through its influence, the halo encircled the sun at roughly the orbit of Mars. A torus of altered spacetime, faintly magnetic, faintly resonant. When mapped through the trajectories of solar wind particles, it appeared as a boundary, a thin shell of order imposed on chaos. Inside the halo, the solar wind slowed. Outside it, turbulence rose. It was as though the entire solar system had been enclosed within a quieted bubble, a laboratory sealed by something that understood physics more intimately than we ever will. Governments stayed silent. They had learned that official words only fueled panic. The public, deprived of information, filled the void with imagination. Some believed the objects had built a shield to protect Earth. Others feared it was a cage. Meanwhile, the scientists kept listening. They turned the deep space network inward, aiming dishes not at distant stars but at the empty coordinates where 3I/Atlas and its companion had once glimmered. First, there was nothing. Then, on September 3rd, a fluctuation. A single, narrow spike at 1,420 megahertz, the hydrogen line again. But this time the signal didn't come from a point. It came from everywhere along the halo at once. A simultaneous whisper encircling the sun. When the frequencies were unfolded through Fourier analysis, they formed an interference pattern identical to the geometry of the vanished line. The system had become a resonator, the halo its amplifier. Something was using the entire solar system as an instrument. As days passed, the interference pattern began to pulse. Slowly at first, one beat every 6 hours, then faster. The cadence matched the orbital period of the Moon divided by 1,000. A symbolic echo, perhaps calibration, perhaps communication. Then, on October 1st, the pulses shifted again. Their spacing grew irregular, encoded in prime intervals. Translating those intervals into time produced a familiar number, 365.25. The year-long countdown had restarted. The scientific community fractured. Some argued that the halo was a transmission array, gathering energy for another burst toward Cygnus. Others suggested it was a stabilizing field protecting the inner system from the sun's variability. A minority whispered a darker thought, that we were inside a kind of recorder, every photon, every radio wave cataloged and folded into a message being prepared elsewhere. On October 9th, the James Webb Telescope detected the first visible trace of the halo. Using coronagraphic imaging, it captured faint arcs of light bending unnaturally around the solar limb, subtle ripples like rings on a pond. Their pattern repeated every 61 seconds, the same interval that had defined every earlier pulse. The ring was alive, breathing light. From Earth's surface, nothing looked different. The sun rose, the planets moved, seasons passed. But in the data streams, a second solar system was unfolding, one made of harmonics instead of matter. At 3:14 Universal Time coordinated on November 9th, exactly 1 year after the first pi pulse, every instrument registered a simultaneous fluctuation. The halo brightened in the infrared spectrum by a factor of 10. Neutrino detectors spiked. Gravitational sensors wavered. For 1 full minute, the inner solar system vibrated like a struck bell. When it ended, a single transmission remained. Not radio, not light, pure modulation of spacetime itself, a pattern imprinted into the gravitational field. When decoded through mathematical transforms, it formed a three-dimensional lattice, a map of the solar system seen from above. But at the outer edge, beyond Pluto, 12 new points appeared, objects not yet known, arranged in a perfect circle. 12 markers, 12 echoes. The coordinates corresponded to nothing visible, yet telescopes pointed there anyway. Days later, faint motions emerged. Dark shapes drifting inward, as though something had awakened at the system's periphery and begun to move. For humanity, the realization arrived in stages: wonder, fear, then a quiet resolve. We were no longer observers. We were participants in a process that had begun long before our species existed. Every pattern, every ratio, every pulse had led to this geometry. The halo was not an end. It was a doorway, and somewhere beyond the orbit of Neptune, 12 shadows were coming through. The first of the 12 appeared in mid-December, a point of darkness that shouldn't have been there at all. It wasn't bright like a comet, not reflective like an asteroid. It was the opposite, an absence, a void that swallowed starlight and gave nothing back. When Hubble trained on its coordinates, the stars behind it dimmed, blurred, then re-emerged seconds later, as though space itself were breathing through it. By the end of the month, all 12 had crossed the Kuiper belt. Their velocities matched, 31 kilometers per second, identical to 3I/Atlas's outbound drift before it turned back. Their spacing was exact, 12 points forming a ring thousands of millions of kilometers across, moving in slow, perfect unison. If you connected them with lines, they traced the same pattern as the halo around the sun. A mirror, a reflection, or a mechanism completing itself. Radio telescopes across the world detected resonance between the outer ring and the inner halo. The signals pulsed in counterphase, energy rippling outward from the sun and returning from the edge of the system like echoes in a cathedral. The solar wind bent. Planetary magnetic fields quivered in response. And, most unsettling of all, time itself began to misbehave. Clocks synchronized to pulsars, nature's most stable timekeepers, drifted by microseconds. Spacecraft telemetry lagged, as though packets of data were moving through a thicker medium. Even light seemed to hesitate near the halo, arriving nanoseconds late when compared with interplanetary baselines. The universe wasn't breaking, it was being retuned. Inside the consortium, panic gave way to a kind of fatal curiosity. Every discipline, astrophysics, quantum optics, even philosophy, was summoned into the same room. No one claimed to understand what was happening, but everyone agreed on one thing. The pattern was not random. It was deliberate, recursive, almost musical. On January 5th, the pattern changed again. The 12 outer objects slowed. Then, one by one, they began to glow, not in visible light, but in gravitational waves. LIGO registered 12 distinct frequencies, each corresponding to a different harmonic of the same bass tone. 7.83 Hertz. The Earth's resonance. The hum of our atmosphere. They were playing our frequency back to us. At 3:14 Universal Time Coordinated, the halo responded. A pulse of light erupted across the solar plane, invisible to the eye but brilliant in infrared. For exactly 61 seconds, every sensor from Mercury to Mars recorded a uniform spike in energy. Then, in the middle of that spike, a modulation appeared, a rhythm that anyone who had been following the phenomenon recognized instantly. Pi. 3.142 seconds bright, 3.142 seconds dim, repeated over and over until the pulse faded. The same signature that began it all, now scaled to the size of a star system. It was a signal, yes, but it was also an equation written in reality. The relationship between radius and circumference, between inside and outside, the halo and the outer ring, us caught perfectly between them. When the pulse ended, the sun's corona flared briefly in geometric symmetry. 12 petals of plasma unfolding like a flower. Solar physicists called it coincidence, but the timing was exact. The petals aligned with the outer object's positions as though the sun itself were participating. In the aftermath, deep space probes began transmitting strange telemetry. Voyager 1's gyroscope spun without torque. New Horizons lost its orientation for 6 minutes, then corrected itself. And Pioneer 10, silent for decades, emitted a single garbled burst before falling quiet again. When decoded, that burst contained only a string of digits. 101010. Binary symmetry, the same code embedded in the gravitational pulses months before. By February, a hypothesis had emerged, whispered first among engineers, then reluctantly among scientists. What if the 12 newcomers weren't visitors at all? What if they were components? If the halo was a resonant shell, these could be anchors, nodes forming an external lattice that would complete a spherical array around the sun. A structure capable of manipulating space, perhaps even folding it. Not to trap, not to shield, but to connect. A network. A bridge. Across observatories, sleepless analysts plotted trajectories. Every path pointed to a single convergence date. November 9th of the following year, the day when Earth, the halo, and the outer ring would align once more. The year of the circle was repeating itself. The system was preparing for something cyclic, something vast. And then, almost mercifully, the activity paused. The outer objects held position at the edge of the solar system. The halo dimmed. Solar radiation normalized. Space returned to silence. But silence, by now, had meaning. The world above and below began to change. Radio bands that had carried the Atlas hum for months were now crowded with faint harmonics no one could isolate or jam. Power grids resonated with tiny fluctuations that matched the halo's pulse period. Plants sprouted anomalies, slight shifts in cellular structure, as if microscopic growth patterns were synchronizing to some new rhythm. Ocean tides began arriving seconds early. Migratory animals changed direction. It was as though the entire biosphere was being tuned to a new key. Humanity, for the first time, faced not invasion or discovery, but resynchronization. We were being included in an equation too large to refuse. The last message from the consortium came as a single-page release, and signed and untranslated from the mathematical form in which it was written. F T equals E caret I pi plus 1 is equal to 0, the most elegant expression in mathematics. A symbol of unity between the fundamental constants of existence, energy, geometry, time, and nothingness. The equation that ties the universe into a circle. 3 days later, all government networks monitoring the halo went dark. No feeds, no updates, only a timestamp repeating endlessly. 365.25 days remaining. And in the darkness above, the 12 faint shadows continued their slow drift inward, patient and perfect, as if waiting for the last note in a symphony only the universe could hear. They called it the final orbit. Not because anyone was certain it was an ending, but because every orbit since 3I/Atlas first appeared had felt like a countdown that finally reached its last rotation. By the beginning of November, a year to the day after the first pi pulse, the entire solar system had become a score written in gravity and light. The 12 outer bodies stood like sentinels at the system's edge, perfectly fixed. The halo around the sun glowed faintly in ultraviolet. And between them, our own world spun inside a geometry so exact that astronomers stopped using words like coincidence. The days leading to the alignment were almost painfully calm. The sun's activity dropped to record lows. Auroras stilled. The ionosphere, normally alive with flicker and hiss, settled into silence. It felt as if the cosmos itself was holding its breath. Governments stopped pretending control. Their final statements were simple. We will continue to observe. After that, nothing. There were no more press conferences, no more denials. Only the quiet acceptance that whatever was about to happen would unfold on a scale far beyond politics, language, or choice. At 3:14 Universal Time Coordinated, the time burned into every instrument and memory. The halo ignited, not with blinding light but with order. Every frequency humans could measure locked into phase. The electromagnetic spectrum itself became a single tone. For 1 minute, the speed of light fluctuated by a measurable fraction, as though the definition of distance had changed. And in that minute, the 12 outer points began to move. They did not rush inward. They slid. Smooth, deliberate arcs curved through space until each node reached the exact point where the halo's invisible lattice intersected its orbit. The pattern that formed was unmistakable, a perfect sphere enclosing the sun, the planets, and us. The first full Dyson geometry ever witnessed, but made not of matter, not of metal, but of space-time itself. Inside the sphere, light behaved differently. Stars beyond the solar system shimmered, refracted through the boundary like sunlight through water. For the first time, we could see the shape of the void we lived in, a subtle curvature and architecture of distance. Then the pulse returned. 3.142 seconds bright, 3.142 seconds dark. the same cosmic rhythm, now magnified until it resonated through the crust of every planet. Ocean tides rose in unison. Seismographs everywhere ticked the same heartbeat. It wasn't destructive. It was gentle, surgical, like tuning a vast instrument whose strings were made of worlds. When the pattern reached its 12th repetition, the frequency changed. The tone that followed was not a note but a chord, dozens of harmonics stacked together into something so deep that even instruments struggled to describe it. Every wavelength of radiation, from gamma to radio, folded into that single chord. And then came the image, not in the sky, inside our machines. Every telescope, every camera, every digital sensor displayed the same frame at the same instant. A view not of the sun or stars, but of a spiral of light extending into a darkness no telescope had ever reached. At its center was a shape, the same spindle seen in the earliest images of 3I/Atlas, but now vast beyond comprehension, its ends curling like the arms of a galaxy. The pattern rotated slowly, and a line of symbols unfolded across the lower edge. Mathematicians would later call them universal descriptors, ratios representing energy, distance, and entropy. Together they formed a single sentence written in mathematics. Equals delta S/delta T H. Energy equals change in order per unit time, multiplied by the smallest unit of action. A new law, or maybe a reminder, that creation itself is the conversion of chaos into pattern. After that, the images vanished. The halo dimmed. The outer ring dissolved into starlight. Space returned to ordinary physics, as if the symphony had ended and the instruments were being put away. But one trace remained, a faint, coherent signal still echoing through every receiver on Earth, low, rhythmic, repeating every 365.25 days. It was the same pulse that had started everything, only softer, almost tender, and woven into it was a new frequency, barely audible above the noise. 7.83 Hertz, the heartbeat of the planet. It meant we had been added to the pattern. No object was ever seen again. No burst, no debris, no residue. Only the data, the memory, and a sky fractionally quieter than before. In the months that followed, humanity changed, not through revelation or invasion, but through alignment. Our instruments began detecting tiny correlations between quantum systems separated by vast distances. Experiments that had once failed now succeeded. Satellites synchronized without signals. And deep within the crust, magnetometers found a new rhythm matching the halo's vanished pulse. The Earth itself seemed to hum in perfect time with the universe. The official records would say the event lasted 61 seconds. The truth is that it never ended. It simply receded into the background, where the constant murmur of existence continues. Every time a radio telescope listens to the quiet between stars, every time a gravitational detector quivers with a faint echo, we still hear it. The circle didn't close. It opened. Whatever 3I/Atlas was, comet, machine, or message, it didn't visit us. It included us. We became part of its geometry, a new harmonic in an old equation that now stretches beyond our sun. And somewhere, light years away, the same pulse may already be arriving at another world's sky, whispering the same invitation. Synchronize. Because perhaps that's how civilizations speak across the void. Not in language, not in symbols, but in rhythm, the shared tempo of curiosity and order, of physics remembering itself. The signal fades now, too faint for the ear but endless in its echo. It leaves behind no proof, only a pattern written into the fabric of the universe. And in that pattern, one truth repeats again and again like the heartbeat of time itself. We were never alone. We were always part of the circle,